This is TV9 News at Christmas with Bruce Owney, Edie Fawcett, and Liz Mathis.
Merry Christmas, everyone. I'm Bruce Owney.
I'm Edie Fawcett.
And I'm Liz Mathis. Welcome to TV9 News at Christmas.
We're about to look back at some of the most interesting, most moving, and most amazing stories of the year 2002.
And what a year it's been. Some news stories we can never forget. Luke Helder and the mailbox bombings, Nicole Plum and baby Chelsea, and the bankruptcy of McLeod USA.
Now, not all of the stories we cover are pleasant. Remember when the West Nile virus swept the state? And most recently, University of Iowa basketball player Pierre Pierce and his sexual assault case made the headlines.
But so much happened during 2002 that we chose to take a closer look at some of the other news stories here in eastern Iowa. We caught up with one of the military reservists who served at Camp X-Ray in Cuba.
And we talked to the first female astronaut from Iowa to serve on the International Space Center. You'll also meet a little boy who will hear his first Christmas because of a cochlear implant.
And we have so many good stories to share with you. Join us now as we take a stroll down memory lane. We begin with the 339th Military Police Company from eastern Iowa. The troops left for Guantanamo Bay, Cuba in January and returned home just before Thanksgiving. TV9's Diane Patthew caught up with group leader and Cedar Rapids police officer Dominic Weib.
Every person that joins the military has a part to play in the war or in the mission that happens.
Cedar Rapids police officer Dominic Weib is happy to be back home. He recently returned from Kentucky, where he and his 339th Military Group patrolled the base at Fort Campbell.
We checked every commercial vehicle that came on to make sure there was no hidden weapon systems or anything.
5 months before that, Weib and his group were assigned to Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, where they held detainees from the War on Terror. A time Weib will never forget, a time he says was mentally exhausting.
It was a little mentally stressful as far as you're right there with people that actually took part in shooting at the U.S. troops in Afghanistan. Also, some of them played a part in the World Trade Center and the Pentagon attacks. So you had to kind of put that aside.
In June, Weib was promoted to captain, and now he's back protecting the streets of Cedar Rapids. And for now, he wants to relax and just enjoy the season.
I'd love to do it again. I wouldn't want to go tomorrow. You know, I'd like to spend another month or so with my kids, but I'd gladly do it again.
In Cedar Rapids, Diane Patthew, KCRG-TV9 News. Nightcast.
With Weib's promotion, he is no longer heading up the MP unit. He will need to choose a new unit by January. Weib says he would like to stay in Cedar Rapids, but is also considering Ames.
Steve Patterson knows he wouldn't be alive today if it wasn't for the Cedar Rapids Police Department. The Marion man suffered a heart attack back in March while he was driving. Doctors say Patterson died, but was shocked back to life by police officers using a defibrillator. TV9's Angie Hunt says it's given Steve and his wife a new perspective on life.
Steve Patterson and his wife Jan never went on a honeymoon when they were first married. Now they are.
When he was still in the coma, I had decided that since we've never really had a honeymoon, that if he came out of the coma, then we would take the honeymoon, and we're going to do that this March. We're going to fly to Hawaii for a week.
Jan was talking to Steve on his cell phone at the time of his heart attack. When he didn't answer her repeated questions, she knew something was wrong. The voice of an officer on the other end of the line confirmed it.
Finally, I heard someone say, "Breathe, mister, breathe." And at that point, you know what that means. There's no mistaking those words.
Officers John Gibson and Laura Faircloth were just blocks away when Patterson suffered his heart attack and responded to the call. In their eyes, they were simply doing their job.
I don't feel like we saved anybody's life. We had training in a specific skill that was able to help him. Fortunately, we were really close to the call, and we had just been given these defibrillators.
For Officer Gibson, this was the second life he had saved in the span of a week using the defibrillator.
Up until the accident on 16th Avenue, I don't think we'd had a successful save with one of these. And then to get two of them in a week, it was very unusual, and fortunately that we were that close.
After he was shocked back to life, doctors decided to attach a defibrillator to Steve's heart. Steve put the device to the test back in August when he came home from work and tried to get some rest.
I lay down, it wasn't 30 seconds, and pow! I felt in my shoulder. And I knew now it was the defibrillator going off. And in the space of 5 days, it went off something like 8 or 9 times. So I wound up back in the hospital again while the doctor checked me out.
Fortunately, that's the only relapse Steve's had. He continues to walk about 6 miles every day on his paper route, as he did before his heart attack. And although there's a history of heart conditions in his family, Steve never had any warning signs.
I mean, I had no premonition. There was no warning. There was no pain. There was, in my arm or the chest, any of the things you normally figure.
Steve and Jan say they don't need another warning like this to remind them to appreciate every day and one another. They know they wouldn't have the opportunity to do that if it wasn't for Officers Faircloth and Gibson.
Were the ones who saved my life, because they did save my life. My heart had stopped. I told my doctor, I said I was probably 5 minutes from death. He said, no, you were dead.
We're mostly thankful that he's here and alive today. I am, anyway. And I know that's just, they consider that part of their job, but it's very important.
It's a good feeling to know that you gave them a second chance.
In Cedar Rapids, Angie Hunt, KCRG-TV9 News.
The Cedar Rapids Police Department has enough defibrillators for every squad car. The units were paid for through a grant from the Department of Justice, and officers are continually recertified on the defibs.
Repairing famous landmarks and building new ones. We continue our review of the top stories of 2002 with the University of Iowa's Old Cap, the Cedar Rapids Veterans Memorial Stadium, and new projects seeking funding from Vision Iowa. Learn more when we come back. Happy holidays and welcome back to TV9 News at Christmas. Construction crews have delivered something of an early Christmas present to the University of Iowa.
The first of 3 wooden frames for the old Capitol's new dome arrived early this month. TV9's Iowa City reporter Mike Wagner tells us with more pieces on the way, the new dome should be done before spring break.
As workers start to put the old Capitol's dome back together, the historic building's roof is once again covered with scaffolding and layers of plastic. Last November's fire destroyed the centerpiece of the university, but no one has really had a clear view of this famous landmark since last August. That's when workers started the restoration project that sparked the fire, a $600,000 sprucing up that will now cost several $1 million to rebuild from scratch.
I kind of miss it just because it's a trademark. It's on every piece of paper you have on the university. I guess I'm looking forward to seeing it. I'm hoping it'll be up by the time I graduate.
In early December, a huge crane rolled onto the Pentacrest to lift the first piece of the new dome into place. Weighing in at 7 tons, this wooden frame sits on top of the famous concrete bunker, a solid slab that stopped the flames from spreading. This tower will house the new bell and some of the equipment for the old Capitol's new ventilation system. After that comes the lantern section, wrapped in windows and columns. Then the actual dome will cap it all off. But like much of the last year and a half, the restoration will be hidden from view. And while it took more than a year to get workers back on the dome, others have been busy in their workshops making all of the pieces.
It has a lot of historical significance for those of us who live here in Iowa. It's unique. These types of projects don't come along very often.
From his wood shop in Davenport, Jim Englander is rebuilding a piece of Iowa's past, and he's doing it piece by piece.
I can see the drawing, but I can also visualize it in my mind in three-dimensional pieces of wood and know how it'll go together.
Using a lathe, Jim turns and shapes a cap that will sit on top of a column. Several squarish pieces of wood are glued together and then shaped using a chisel and some sandpaper. Eventually, they'll make up the columns that sit under the old Capitol's new dome.
By the time you count the base, the main shaft, the column capital, all the carvings, there's probably at least 100 pieces in one of these columns.
And when all of these pieces come together, designers are promising a more magnificent-looking old Capitol. The fire that destroyed the old dome was caused by a worker with a torch. He used it as he tried to remove coatings that have concealed detailed woodwork, details that will once again be visible.
I think very much you'll be surprised, because look at the detail that's lost. I mean, this right now is a lump from the ground.
The university expects to have all of the framework for the new structure in place before the end of the year. Then workers will start to finish off the framework and bring a historic building back to life. From the Iowa City Newsroom, Mike Wagner, KCRG-TV9 News.
Some of the wood for the old Capitol repairs comes from Johnson County. Oak trees that were removed as part of a road project were milled into lumber for some of the framework.
Santa left an early spring present for baseball fans in eastern Iowa this year. After years of work, the Cedar Rapids Colonels opened the season in a brand new Veterans Memorial Stadium. The Colonels made the playoffs and set an attendance record of 196,000 fans. TV9's Dave Fransman says the baseball club hopes there's more to come next year.
No, the answer to this famous Field of Dreams line wasn't the ghost of shoeless Joe Jackson. It was thousands and thousands of fans. Yes, there was new grass on the field in April of 2002 when the Colonels opened play in a new $15 million ballpark. A new everything, in fact. The full house crowd didn't count this day when the game was a rainout. And thanks to some cold spring days, the Colonels came up just shy of their attendance goal for the whole season.
We had hoped to get 200,000 last year, and we ended up with 196. So we were just a little bit short of that goal, but we did set the attendance mark, and it's one that we want to break again this year.
But fans did spend about $1 more per person than expected when they got to the ballpark. So financially, the ball club came out okay. That's especially important in year two because lease payments to the city jump from $10,000 a month to $20,000.
You're right. They go up to $20,000 in year two and then $35,000 in year three through years 20. So it's a substantial gain. But what you have to remember is that a lot of the costs we had in the first year of operation goes away.
That includes a lot of costs related to fundraising and one-time expenses for construction. A few touch-up jobs remain, and a flap about stairs that don't quite meet building code standards may end up costing some money.
Yeah. That was this year, right?
The club employees working behind the scenes to sell season tickets, advertising, and corporate outings may find the job just a bit easier. After all, a year ago they had to pitch plans and a half-finished ballpark. Now you can see what you're buying.
Now people have been out here and they've had a chance to see it and experience it. And when we're bringing prospective clients out here, we can show them the facility, whether it's a seat, whether it's a suites, whatever it may be, advertising. Whereas you mentioned in the past, last year we were probably selling more blue sky and blueprints.
Rader says he's predicting no sophomore slump. Instead, he wants to sell 1,000 full season tickets and expects 50 games with at least 2,500 fans in the seats. Ballpark supporters did indeed build it. Now they expect you to keep coming out to the games.
Just to hit the ball and touch 'em all. A moment in the sun. It's gone and you can't tell that one goodbye.
Dave Fransman, KCRG-TV9 News.
Ball club operators say a World Series win by the Anaheim Angels doesn't hurt either. It could help boost attendance for the club's farm team, the Colonels, this coming year.
Riverfront development has really become the name of the game in Cedar Rapids, the Waterloo-Cedar Falls area, and Dubuque. And if organizers have their way, Vision Iowa funds will be an essential part of each project.
Dubuque's ambitious America's River project is the furthest along. The new Grand Harbor Resort opened earlier this month. This $26.5 million hotel features the state's first indoor water park. When the $188 million riverfront development is finished, it'll also feature a museum, aquarium, and riverwalk. America's River is becoming a reality thanks to a $40 million grant from Vision Iowa. Now Cedar Rapids is hoping for similar success with its $154 million River Run project. The developments along the Cedar River would include a year-round city market, an amphitheater, a revitalized Czech village, an extreme sports park, and a new St. Wenceslas urban square.
It is a reclaiming of property and a use of existing assets, this land, and at the same time, it looks forward and it provides something for future generations.
Waterloo, Cedar Falls, and Evansdale are backing what they call the Cedar Valley Riverfront Renaissance. The original $72 million plan included a mix of cultural, retail, and recreational attractions. Vision Iowa pledged $16 million, but that project lost those dollars when voters refused to extend a local option sales tax. Now revisions make the new Riverfront Renaissance different from other projects seeking Vision Iowa funds.
This isn't just one city, it's an entire northeast area of the state of Iowa, and I think that makes us unique, and I think it makes us worthy of a shot at some of those funds to develop this part of the state.
Only about $25 million is left in the Vision Iowa Fund. Ironically, that's exactly what Cedar Rapids requested for River Run. But Waterloo, Cedar Falls, and Evansdale are requesting $12 million for their Riverfront Renaissance. The two requests have put the two projects in direct competition.
It's very difficult not to be competitive when you put a pot of money out there and ask cities to go for it.
Grants are competitive. You have a certain amount of money, you have projects that come in way over the number of dollars that you have, and you make determinations. I think the projects compete, but the communities aren't competing.
By the way, supporters of both projects say if the Vision Iowa funding doesn't come through, the developments will still go forward.
Coming up next on TV9 News at Christmas, catch up with some of the newsmakers of eastern Iowa, the nuns who went to jail for their cause, the first female astronaut from Iowa who spent 6 months in space, and a little boy who can hear the magical sounds of Christmas for the very first time. We'll bring you those stories and more right after this. Welcome back to TV9 News at Christmas. For two Dubuque nuns, last Christmas meant spending time in a federal prison.
But after being released in January, the two wasted no time in continuing to fight for their cause. The sisters were convicted of trespassing onto government property at the former School of the Americas in the summer of 2001. The nuns say the government-funded facility is a training ground for state-sponsored killings in Central and South America. TV9's Dubuque reporter Nick Glue tells us how the past year has changed their lives.
When Dorothy and Gwen Hennessy were sentenced to 6 months in a federal prison, they became two of the oldest inmates serving time. They, along with 26 other protesters, were placed behind these walls in July of 2001 and called it home for the holidays 1 year ago.
With the women there and everybody trying really hard to make it a happy time, we had nothing to work with. But we really had a lovely Christmas. We worked together and made things and decorated the whole place and with snowflakes and the whole yarn, and it was kind of awesome.
When the sisters were released on January 14th, they not only received a large welcome home, but a special Christmas with their family nearly a month late. And while 6 months of confinement would seem to isolate a person from public, it did quite the opposite.
And we appreciate the support of several thousand letters in prison. It was almost embarrassing because some people didn't get any letters, and we all got our letters at the same time.
But not even prison would keep these peaceful protesters from continuing to fight for their cause. In November, more than 40 Dubuque residents joined the nuns in returning to Fort Benning for the annual rally. In 1990, it was a crowd of only 10 that would gather to fast and pray. Now, more than a decade later, the Fort Benning rally attracts more than 10,000 voices. While serving time in federal prison, Gwen was reminded of just how important it was to continue their fight after being released.
On the day of the attack, the terrorist attack, I was out on the track, as I did every morning, just to keep my sanity, to be away where there's quiet and noise outside. No noise outside, and I came in to the alley and everyone was glued to this TV in this little bitty room, and one woman jumped up after I found a place to sit down and she said, "That's why you're here, isn't it? Trying to stop terrorists."
More than 90 people were arrested at this year's rally. For Dorothy, who's approaching the age of 90, there was some caution.
But when I got to the line, everybody else was crossing. There was a big crowd by that gate. that had been put up, and I wanted to get close to it and see it. But one of the leaders said, you know, it might be dangerous for you.
The Hennessy's say more than 9,000 children are killed every day from terrorist-related activities. That's why they continue to meet each Monday at Washington Park in Dubuque, spreading a message of peace.
Well, I'm thankful for being able to voice my opinions. I'm thankful for the over 70 people that came from our area, Dubuque land area, on the bus to go down to Fort Benning, which was a first.
And while the holidays will be spent in the confines of the Mount St. Francis Convent in Dubuque, their message will continue to spread into another new year. In Dubuque, Nick Blue, KCRG-TV9 News.
The Hennessys say their work has earned them many prestigious honors, including the Quad Cities-based Peace on Earth Award. The first person to receive the award in 1964 was John F. Kennedy.
In the same newscast 1 year ago, we told you the story of 8-year-old Eric Lemkool. The Cedar Rapids boy was going to have an operation to receive a cochlear implant. Eric was born with poor hearing and had become almost completely deaf. After consultations with the doctors and weighing all the pros and cons as a family, Eric and his parents decided the cochlear was something they wanted to try. TV9's Scott Sanborn brings us up to date.
March 7th was a big day in Eric Lemkool's young life.
Are you having a good day?
Oh, yeah, better.
Eric was hearing the first sounds through his new cochlear implant. Eric received his CI during an operation 6 weeks earlier at the University of Iowa Hospitals and Clinics. It took a while for Eric to get used to it.
I want it down.
Want it down?
I don't like it.
Yep, we gotta try it.
Eric remembers what it was like.
It's like a bomb coming off to me.
Really?
Yeah, it's like...
But it doesn't do that anymore?
No.
No? And you had to go through different steps to have it adjusted.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, just turn it up a little bit.
Right. So you're listening to me now.
Yeah.
And what do I sound like to you?
You sound like normal.
I sound like normal?
Sometimes a little bit different.
Right. And now that you're in regular classroom.
Yeah, I really like that. My teacher told me that it was like her Christmas present. She told me, and I'm like, okay, yeah.
Up until just 3 weeks ago, Eric studied reading and language arts in a deaf education class of just 6 students. Now, he sits here among 20 other students in a regular general education class.
He's doing great. Eric's doing really wonderful. He's integrated for education for all of his classes, and he's just doing great.
I know, I look back and I can't believe it. It's just, somebody told me though, and I can't remember who, that he would take this and succeed. And he sure has, a lot sooner than we'd expected.
And not just in school. Eric's involved in all kinds of sports. On this night, Eric gets help from his dad in AAU wrestling. He's been blessed with very involved parents. Eric's mom and dad took sign classes to help him when he was younger and got him hearing aids. Eric's cochlear is just the latest of several developmental tools that have helped Eric get to where he is today.
Enrolling him into the program that we offer here at Arthur Elementary, the deaf ed program that gives him the support with the sign language, vocabulary, the tools that he needs to be successful and to determination. Eric is also a very smart kid. He has that determination and willingness to succeed and want to succeed. Asks a lot of questions, is always curious of how things work.
The cochlear implant is working for Eric, but it's not for everyone, and many deaf children do well without a CI. Eric's just glad he has his, and like any child, he's looking forward to Christmas.
Oh, yeah, I want a PlayStation 2 game.
I figured that. Well, if you could have a PlayStation 2 or being in a regular classroom, which would you rather have?
Both.
Scott Sanborn, KCRG-TV9 News.
There are 22 hearing-impaired students in Arthur Elementary School's deaf education program. 6 of them have cochlear implants.
As Eric's dream to hear has become reality, so has Peggy Whitson's dream to live in space. This year, the Mount Air native was the first woman from Iowa to venture into space. Whitson spent 6 months in orbit at the International Space Station. She returned to Earth earlier this month. TV9's Renee Chu chronicles the out-of-this-world journey that made Iowa proud.
3 centimeters.
When you're training as an astronaut, space, rather than sky, is the limit.
3 new residents headed for the International Space Station.
On June 5th, Peggy Whitson and 2 Russian cosmonauts blasted off in the Space Shuttle Endeavour. The moment made her the first woman from Iowa to take such a flight. Her desire for a career in space was launched by her female predecessors.
But when I graduated from high school, it was the year that they selected the first female astronauts. And I think at that point I thought, this is going to be something I'm going to try and do.
Whitson not only tried, she succeeded. After earning her bachelor's degree at Iowa Wesleyan in Mount Pleasant and a PhD at Rice University, she started working at NASA and put her Iowa work ethic to use.
I was raised on a farm. 2 hardest working people I know are my parents. And I think they always encouraged me, always told me, you know, you can do whatever you set your mind to. And I think I even surprised them.
As a member of the Expedition 5 crew, Whitson trained hard for her mission to continue the assembly of the International Space Station and to research how to live in space longer with the least amount of risk. Whitson says living and working in space was definitely an adjustment.
Adapting to being in zero-G is a process that takes actually quite a while. Some of the initial things that go on are the fluid shift in the body, and it makes your face and your head feel puffy and congested, but your body adapts to that relatively quickly. Interestingly enough, now I'm getting calluses on the top of my feet from holding myself in position while I'm doing work.
But that never interfered with getting the job done. Whitson talks about a typical day in her not-so-typical mission.
Upload the latest inventory management files and look at the execute packages to determine what notes from the ground you've gotten, information about the tasks you're going to do today, tool lists, where to find the tools, and all this information. And then you get to start your day. After you do all this stuff, you start your day, which will include either maintenance or scientific payload experiments, repairs, whatever's needed in order to sustain the station and to conduct the investigations.
Iowa kept up with Expedition 5's progress, an interest so strong even Whitson could feel it while in space.
I don't know if I feel so much pressure as it is pride from being from Iowa and having so many people interested.
The things that we learn now will contribute to our further exploration, which I imagine that our exploration of space will continue as a global event as opposed to a country or 1 or 2 countries continuing on. And I think the international cooperation is probably the most valuable.
And Whitson's experience in space, certainly one of Iowa's most memorable. Renee Chu, KCRG-TV9 News.
The space shuttle carrying the expedition back home encountered problems with Mother Nature. Peggy Whitson stayed in orbit for an extra 3 days before the weather finally permitted a landing at Kennedy Space Center December 7th. By the way, this month marked the 30th anniversary of Apollo 17, the last manned mission to the moon.
There's more to come on TV9 News at Christmas, from Mother Nature's raging rivers to the power of forgiveness. Find out how, in some cases, good can come from bad. Join us for more right after this. Thanks for joining us for TV9 News at Christmas. Last May, Bryce and Dolores Whirling pulled up to their mailbox in Tipton like any other day in rural Iowa.
But this time, when Dolores reached inside the mailbox, it exploded just a matter of inches from her face. The blast knocked her over into her husband and damaged her ears. TV9's Craig Brown checks to see how this one victim of the mailbox bomber is doing.
The cuts on her forehead and lips have healed, but life is far from back to normal for Dolores Whirling. 7 months after her mailbox exploded, doctors here at the University of Iowa Hospitals and Clinics are still working on her ears.
I do a lot of guessing at what people are saying and this sort of thing, but it has improved, and I'm thankful for that.
Whirling said her right eardrum healed itself, but doctors had to rebuild her left with surgery. Doctors say the damage to her inner ear was worse than they first thought, and the damage will likely be permanent. Whirling was just one of 6 people in the country to be injured by the mailbox bombs. Federal agents found 18 pipe bombs across 5 states. Shortly after, they arrested 21-year-old Luke Helder, who police say admitted to the crimes. While Helder awaits his trial in a Lynn County jail cell, Dolores Whirling says she has had no contact with him and feels no anger.
No, I've been asked that a lot of times, and I am not angry. Yes, it cost me, and it took a lot out of my life to begin with, but I am going on, and I guess I feel compassion for him.
While Whirling goes through her physical treatment to regain her hearing, she hopes Helder will go through mental treatment so he can regain his life. She wants to see him released.
I feel for him. I feel for his family. It was definitely wrong. I mean, you cannot do this to other people. But hopefully he can get on the right track.
After the explosion, investigators picked up every shard of her old mailbox, and the Whirlings didn't bother to get it replaced. They now pick up their mail in town. But other than that small change, they don't dwell on the events of last May.
It happened, and it's all said and done, and I go on with my life, and I'm not saying I don't think about it. I have no nightmares. My faith has pulled me through, plus my husband, plus my family.
Whirling says she's most grateful this Christmas for her church family and the kind notes she's received from all over the country. In Iowa City, Craig Brown, KCRG-TV9 News.
Luke Helder's trial is set to start on April 14th, and he's using insanity as his defense.
As we think back over the past year of weather, a few things come to mind. A very mild and quiet winter, a fairly seasonal spring, and a chilly fall. For some people, the date, June 4th, will stand out as the worst weather day of the year. That's the day flash floods hit Marion and Cedar Rapids. TV9 meteorologist Josh Baines looks back at the wet summer.
The rain came down so quickly and swiftly that many people who live along Indian Creek in Marion and Cedar Rapids did not have much time to get out of their homes. Some came out with just a change of clothes. Dozens of homes were evacuated after storms dumped more than 8 inches of rain in a 24-hour period. This caused rising waters and sewer backups in many homes. Most residents along Indian Creek say that these raging waters were much worse than the floods of 1993. The problems were not just confined to homes. The Cedar Valley Christian School dealt with floodwaters as the water moved up the parking lot and into the gym. At Thomas Park in Marion, the floodwaters covered all the playground equipment and park buildings. This is something that did not happen in 1993.
The rainfall that fell on June 4th, you can see in the Cedar Rapids area, was not really that widespread. At the airport, not even an inch of rain fell, but from our weather spotter, Eileen Robinson in Marion, she had 5 inches of rainfall. You really have to look at what we call Doppler estimated rainfall, and this is courtesy of the National Weather Service. And you see here is Cedar Rapids and also Dyersville, and the reds and the blacks right here indicating about 8 to 10 inches of rainfall in parts of Dubuque County and Delaware County. And you kind of see the strip of about 6 to 8 inches that fell in Marion and caused a lot of flooding near Indian Creek.
The flooding also changed the plans of one Lynn County supervisor. On June 4th, Linda Langston started her day by making last-minute campaign phone calls. Before long, she shifted her efforts to save what she could before the floodwaters took over. After the water stopped rising, it was time to get the water out and assess the damage.
The water finally blew out the windows in the basement, and it just came in like a waterfall.
Replacing ruined furniture, appliances, and water-soaked carpet were next on the list. That was 6 months ago. After a lot of time and effort, things have improved around the Langston household.
We replaced all the flooring. We put in tile, we put in carpet. We had to replace sheetrock and insulation, replaced a bunch of appliances, furnace, air conditioner, washer, dryer, everything. Of course, all my extra wallpaper and carpet was in the basement, so it got wet, so we had to re-wallpaper, repaint, and re-carpet just about everything. I encourage people to be really compassionate when this happens to other people, whether it's a fire or a tornado or a flood.
Hopefully, we will not have to contend with this devastating flooding as we move into the new year of 2003.
Tis the season for celebrations with family, reminiscing with old friends, and recapping the best of the year. Take a look back at the record-breaking year of the Iowa Hawkeyes, the heat and humility of the bicycle race across Iowa, the winning choice a cross-country runner made for his teammate, and the best of the holiday season in eastern Iowa. We'll have more heartwarming stories for you in just a moment. Welcome back to TV9 News at Christmas. It's been a magical year for the Iowa football team.
The Hawkeyes had their first 11-win season in school history. And TV9's Scott Sable looks back at this record-breaking year.
In their opener against Akron, Iowa showcased their big and talented offensive line and their little scat back, Freddie Russell, who rushed for 172 yards on 14 carries, and Iowa won their opener big, 57-21.
If I wanted to be the starter, I was going to have to do something big, you know, just to have their mouth to hang down, make them think about me more as a starter.
Week 2 was a tough road test for the Hawks in Oxford, Ohio. Miami of Ohio, led by QB Ben Roethlisberger, took a 17-16 third-quarter lead. But Iowa rallied behind the arm of Brad Banks with a 29-24 win.
It was a good road win for us. You know, first road game, we need to come out and establish that win. And, you know, we made some mistakes, and things didn't look real good at times.
So the Hawks went into their showdown with Iowa State 2-0, and their big O-line opened up some huge holes for Freddie Russell early. But Iowa blew a 17-point third-quarter lead, losing 36-31, thanks to some great plays by Seneca Wallace and 2 big fumbles by Brad Banks, who was playing with an injured hand but made no excuses after the game.
I hit the ball out one time, and then the other time the ball just slipped out.
Obviously, they won the most important half of the ball game, the second half. They did a great job and did the things necessary to win.
The Hawks rebounded in Week 4 to blow out Utah State 48-7 as backup running back Jermel Lewis, filling in for the banged-up Russell, rushed for 109 yards on 9 carries. In their Big Ten opener, the Hawks jumped all over Penn State and Happy Valley, leading 35-20 with 4 minutes to go in the game, when the Nittany Lions rallied to tie the game and send it to overtime. But unlike the Iowa State game, the Hawkeyes were able to close the deal this time. Banks hit C.J. Jones for the TD in the first overtime, and the Hawk defense came up big, and Iowa beat Penn State 42-35 in overtime.
You're like, oh, man, I don't believe this happened. But things like that happen. That's the way this game is played, you know. You just got to remember to keep your composure, keep going and pushing on.
Another tough test for the Hawks in Week 6. Purdue opened up a 14-3 halftime lead at Kinnick, but it was Iowa's turn to come back with a drive of the year that really defined Brad Banks' All-American season. Brad with a 44-yard run, and then on 4th and goal at the 7, Banks hits Dallas Clark for the game-winning touchdown in the 31-28 win.
It's usually not a real pretty play, but if it works, it's beautiful.
Week 7, the Hawks blew out Michigan State at Kinnick 44-16 as the defense dominated. The pride and joy of Plainfield, Iowa, Derek Pagel with the interception for a touchdown. Once again, defense ruled today as the Hawkeyes beat the Hoosiers in Bloomington 24-8. Grant Steen with a school record 3 interceptions. And then there was a trip to the big house where the Iowa O-line and D-line completely dominated this football game. Jermel Lewis 109 yards rushing, and Colin Cole and Howard Hodges ate John Navarre for breakfast, lunch, and brunch. Hawks beat Michigan for the first time since 1990, 34-9.
This is for all the Hawks that have played, have worn the Tiger Hawk, and haven't been able to beat Michigan. This is for them.
Iowa delivered another knockout punch against Bucky the Badger, beating Wisconsin 20-3. Banks with another TD toss to Dallas Clark to put the game away. Senior day against Northwestern was another rout, 62-10. Brad Banks was a perfect 10 for 10 passing for 3 touchdowns and 2 more rushing, and that left the crowd chanting Heisman. One game left to finish the Big Ten undefeated and gain a share of the conference title, and the Hawks weren't about to let the season slip away. Freddie Russell with 196 yards rushing and a 45-21 win over the Gophers, and the celebration was on.
The credit goes to our players. They have been the guys that have persevered. They've been knocked on their tails.
But every time they are, they just keep coming back with a great attitude, and that's a Hawkeye tradition.
Thousands of bikers rode 500 miles through Iowa this past summer on RAGBRAI. TV9's John Campbell takes a look at the week-long journey across the state of Iowa.
We left Sioux Center with high hopes and a little trepidation about what the next 7 days and 479 miles would offer. And what they offered was what makes RAGBRAI the great event it is. We listened to the singing of the nuns on the run. And we sang along with the Cherokee Symphony. Continuing the musical theme, how can we ever forget Beverly Clover breaking out into song at sunrise?
Looks like we made it. Look how far we've come, my baby.
We will always remember the special ceremonies in Sioux Center and Charles City honoring Escape New York, the team of New York firefighters and cops who lost loved ones in 9/11.
I'm sure if they could be here and see all of you out there, they'd say nothing but thanks. But I like to believe that, you know, they're up there and they're busy doing a bike ride across a windy, hot place in heaven.
How could we forget Dean Mathias pedaling across Iowa standing up on a bike with no seat? Or Ed Gellis repairing the flat on his 1941 Classic.
Ready to put her back on. Another 5 minutes, I should be on the road.
Give me 5. Welcome to Ayrshire. Welcome to Ayrshire.
There was Winona Loomis, the one-person welcoming committee in Ayrshire.
Give me 5. Welcome to Ayrshire. Great to have you.
Pig pictures in Nashua. And the underpass into Old Wine. All the time, heading east to Bellevue.
How's it going?
We're dying.
I don't believe it.
You know, we chose the long way. We knew we'd get there someday. They said, I'll bet they'll never make it. But just look at us biking on. We're still together, still going strong.
That we were. Not even pouring rain on the final day could dampen our spirits. And in a way, that should have been expected.
And by the way, this rain made RAGBRAI official. Without the rain, it's not official.
Until the sun rises again on RAGBRAI 31, I'm John Campbell, KCRG-TV9 Sports.
TV9's John Campbell rode every mile of that ride. It's a pretty tough one, too. We don't know if he'll try it again next year.
Well, TV9's John Campbell brings us a story that's worth retelling. It took place at the state cross-country meet in Fort Dodge on November 2nd. The principal players were Mount Vernon Lisbon teammates Chris Legore, a senior, and Conrad Lichty, a sophomore.
It was going pretty good. I was in second place. I was feeling pretty good.
Conrad was just running like crazy.
I got second last year, and I was in like eighth or ninth coming in the last stretch and having a pretty bad race.
That last maybe 300, my muscles pretty much shut down, and I staggered my way for a while.
I was looking ahead, and I saw him faltering, losing his balance.
You could see the finish. It was right there. It was 30 yards away.
And I caught up to him just as he fell. And then, I mean, I didn't think about it at all. I just grabbed him.
If he had fallen there, he would have been trampled.
So I just locked elbows with him and tried to encourage him best I could.
I think I was in slight shock, but I was aware that he was dragging me, but that was about it.
And then just walked him towards the finish, and then they crossed together.
They finished 15th and 16th. Still good enough to give Mount Vernon Lisbon the state title, but they soon learned they had both been disqualified.
I was kind of in disbelief. I didn't regret it, but it was something that I really thought about quite a bit.
People we didn't even know would come up and congratulate us and say that was a really neat thing you did.
I thought about it a lot that night, and it was the worst performance I've ever had, and it was probably the best performance I've ever had.
We were more proud of him for doing this than we would have been if he'd won the race.
As we told you earlier, the Hawkeyes got what they wanted in their stockings.
And so did a lot of other people. Starting in November, we began featuring people who had interesting stories to tell about Christmas.
We called the feature Countdown to Christmas and showcased Eastern Iowans who sometimes have a unique perspective on December 25th. Here are some of their stories.
A vacated farmers market building is an unlikely place to find a glassblower from Germany. Rolf Bombeck came to Cedar Rapids because of an invitation from the Ambrose Advisory Board. He's here to promote Chris Krindelmarkt, the board's fundraiser.
Every city in Germany practically has one. The granddaddy of them all is Nuremberg.
It's a marketplace where shoppers can buy Christmas trinkets.
All kinds of German Christmas ornaments, wooden things, nutcrackers, smokers, pyramids. Of course you had bratwurst. Of course you had Glühwein.
So when the Ambrose Arts Board talked about a fundraiser, Dr. Martin suggested this for Cedar Rapids. Then he set out to make it happen 6 years ago.
What's in there, George? Raisins and citron.
From Germany to the Czech village.
Well, I started when I was 15. And I'm 67 now, just turned 67.
We went inside the Sikora Bakery in the Czech village to make a traditional braided bread called hoska. Master baker George Sikora has the recipes memorized.
We start with rye bread, and there's about 100 loaves there, a little bit better.
When the bakery was up for sale a while ago, John Rocharik decided to buy it. He made sure George came with the kitchen.
Did you catch that?
The ease of plucking it out of there is perfect.
Dave Smith is on a mission in the weeks before Christmas. He's the person from the Cedar Rapids Parks Department who picks out the Christmas tree for the city of Cedar Rapids.
I'm looking at Christmas trees today.
Dave gets calls throughout the year from residents wanting to donate trees from their property. Sometimes they need to widen a driveway or build a garage. Whatever the reason, Dave goes to each home and takes a look at the trees.
This is a concolor fir.
It can't be too fat, it won't fit on the truck. It can't be too tall, it won't clear the power lines. And they'll never take one that's crooked or thin. This year, a tree from Parkview Court made the cut. At the Amana Woolen Mills, the bouncing red and green threads give a hint that Christmas blankets are being made.
The mill dates back to the early 1800s when Amana was a communal society. And they were self-contained at that time, so they made everything for their community within the community. So the blankets were manufactured for the community to use.
The woolen mill used to employ about 150 loomers, and this old loom, the W3, was what weaved the blankets. Now 3 people run the computerized looms and produce wool, cotton, and acrylic blankets. Then on St. Nicholas Day, Czech historian Bernie Drahosel told us about an old friend, Svate Mikuláš.
He was the bishop of Myra in what is now Turkey, Asia Minor. He had a warm, very warm rapport with the people in his area because he was known for doing whatever he could to bring them food if they were hungry or shelter if they were homeless.
Czech tradition has it that St. Nick makes a list of good and bad children and then makes a recommendation to the baby Jesus.
I'm done with Susie
and here's
Rob,
someone with a Christmas shopping list. Marie Sullivan is a mother of
Jenny, Kim, Susie, Betsy, Robbie, Carrie, Timmy, Katie, Randy, Sherry, Annie, John.
Yes, 12 children. You can imagine what happens at their house when everyone comes home.
You have to write down each name, and you have to write down what you brought them. And then you gotta, and then when you hide them, that's the trouble. When you hide them, sometimes you don't find everything.
Marie certainly has her shopping down to a science. She's also started a new family tradition, a balloon release on Jesus' birth. She hopes that will remind her children and 12 grandchildren there's more to Christmas than the wish list.
Oh, that's a nice touch. And you know what? With Marie's 12 children and 12 grandchildren, she gets her son-in-laws, get this, underwear.
Oh, you have to have that at Christmas.
Yeah, because she says, you know, their wives don't get it for them, so that's what she gets them.
They don't have time,
They don't have
probably,
time.
to go out and buy things like that.
But obviously, it shows family is very important to everyone at this time of year, and we hope that you all are able to have a Christmas with your friends and family, your loved ones at this
Sharing
time
time with family and friends is the greatest gift you can give.
It's very important. So that wraps up our TV9 News at Christmas.
And we wish all the best for you and yours this holiday season.
Thanks for joining us. Have a very Merry Christmas.